What if I told you that the greatest fortunes in history weren't built just with money, but with intelligent strategy and unshakable faith? Today, we're going to discover how Jacob transformed practically nothing into an empire, using principles that you can apply right now in your own life. If you want to uncover these ancient strategies that still work today, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, because we're about to dive deep into one of history's most fascinating success stories. So who was Jacob? Jacob was the son of Isaac and grandson of Abraham, born into a world where your birth order determined your entire future. But here's the thing, Jacob wasn't the firstborn. His twin brother Esau held that coveted position, which meant Esau was entitled to the family inheritance, the blessing, and all the wealth that came with it. Jacob was essentially starting from second place in a race where only first place mattered. Sound familiar? Many of today's most successful entrepreneurs started in similar positions, without the obvious advantages, without the family connections, without the inheritance. But Jacob had something that many successful entrepreneurs have. He could see opportunity where others saw only tradition. The first major deal of Jacob's life happened when his brother Esau came home exhausted and starving from hunting. Jacob was cooking a stew, and Esau demanded some food. Instead of just giving it to him, Jacob made an offer. "I'll give you this meal in exchange for your birthright." Now, most people would think Jacob was crazy, trading a bowl of soup for a birthright. But Jacob understood something crucial. He recognized the true value before others did. While Esau saw only his immediate hunger, Jacob saw the long-term wealth and position that birthright represented. This is our first lesson. Successful people recognize value before others do. They think beyond the immediate and see the bigger picture. But every strategic move has consequences. Jacob's tactics created serious family tension, and eventually, he had to flee for his life. This is where most people's stories would end, in failure and exile, but not Jacob's. During his escape, something extraordinary happened. Jacob had a dream where he saw a ladder reaching from earth to heaven, with angels ascending and descending on it. In that moment, he received a promise that would fuel his faith for the next 20 years. This wasn't just a spiritual experience. It was the foundation of his business strategy. Here's the thing, sometimes your greatest growth comes in your most difficult moments. Jacob was about to turn his exile into his MBA. Jacob ended up working for his uncle Laban, and what happened next is a masterclass in strategy and persistence. Jacob fell in love with Laban's daughter Rachel and agreed to work 7 years to marry her. 7 years of his life for one woman. That's commitment. But on the wedding day, Laban switched daughters and gave him Leah instead. Jacob had been outmaneuvered. Most people would quit right there. But Jacob? He negotiated to work another 7 years for Rachel. 14 years of labor just to marry the woman he loved. But here's what's brilliant. During those 14 years, Jacob was building something much more valuable than just romantic relationships. He was building his reputation as someone who honors his commitments, even when the terms change unfavorably. This is crucial for modern business. Build your reputation even when conditions aren't ideal. Your integrity becomes your competitive advantage. But the real genius move came next. After those 14 years, Jacob negotiated a new deal with Laban. Instead of wages, he asked for all the speckled, spotted, and dark-colored sheep and goats from Laban's flocks. On the surface, this seemed like a terrible deal for Jacob. These were the minority animals, the ones that were considered less valuable. Laban must have thought he was getting the better end of this bargain. But Jacob had something Laban didn't. Specialized knowledge. Jacob understood animal breeding and genetics in a way that was revolutionary for his time. He used selective breeding techniques, controlling which animals mated and when. He literally engineered the genetic outcomes of the flocks. The result? Within 6 years, Jacob's wealth multiplied exponentially. The flocks under his care produced predominantly speckled, spotted, and dark animals, all of which belonged to him according to their agreement. This teaches us 3 modern principles. First, use specialized knowledge as your competitive advantage. Second, take calculated risks that others don't understand. And third, think in systems, not just immediate results. But here's what made Jacob different from just being a clever businessman. His faith wasn't separate from his strategy. His faith guided his decisions, gave him patience during the difficult years, and provided him with the confidence to take risks that others wouldn't take. Faith, for Jacob, wasn't passivity. It was action guided by a greater purpose. After 20 years of building his wealth in exile, Jacob had achieved something remarkable. He had gone from being a refugee with nothing to controlling vast flocks and herds that stretched across the landscape. But now came perhaps his greatest challenge yet. It was time to return home. There was just one enormous problem standing between Jacob and his homeland: his brother Esau, the same brother he had deceived decades earlier when they were young men, the same brother whose birthright he had purchased for a bowl of stew, the same brother whose blessing he had stolen through elaborate deception. And now, according to his scouts, Esau was coming to meet him with 400 armed men. Most people in Jacob's position would panic. After all, 20 years had passed. Who knew what kind of resentment had been building in Esau's heart? 400 men wasn't a welcoming committee. It was an army. But this is where we see Jacob's evolution from a clever young man into a master strategist. Instead of fleeing or preparing for battle, he developed a sophisticated diplomatic approach that would make modern negotiators proud. First, he implemented a risk management strategy. He divided his entire household, his wives, children, servants, and livestock, into 2 separate groups. His reasoning was brilliant. If Esau attacked one group, the other could escape. This is diversification at its finest. Never put all your assets in one vulnerable position. Next, he launched what we might call today a strategic PR campaign. Jacob sent wave after wave of gifts ahead of him. Hundreds of goats, sheep, camels, cattle, and donkeys. But these weren't just random gifts. Each group was sent separately, with specific instructions to the servants carrying them. When Esau asked, "Who owns these animals?" the servants were to say, "Your servant Jacob's. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau, and Jacob himself is coming behind us." This was psychological warfare at its most sophisticated. By the time Esau actually encountered Jacob, he would have received multiple waves of valuable gifts, each one reinforcing the message that Jacob was approaching as a humble servant, not a threat. It was reputation management and conflict resolution rolled into one brilliant strategy. But Jacob wasn't done yet. He sent carefully crafted messages ahead, using language that acknowledged Esau's superior position while expressing hope for reconciliation. Every word was chosen to diffuse tension and rebuild relationship. The night before the crucial meeting, however, something extraordinary happened that would change everything. Jacob sent his family across the Jabbok River, but he remained alone on the other side. And there, in the darkness, a mysterious figure appeared and wrestled with him until dawn. This wasn't just a physical struggle. It was a spiritual and psychological battle that went to the core of who Jacob was. For hours, they grappled in the darkness. The mysterious figure struck Jacob's hip, leaving him with a permanent limp, but Jacob refused to let go. "I will not let you go unless you bless me," he declared. The figure asked, "What is your name?" And when Jacob answered, the figure said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." This was more than just a name change. It was a complete identity transformation. Jacob, which meant deceiver or supplanter, had become Israel, meaning he who wrestles with God or God's fighter. The clever schemer who had built his early success through deception had evolved into someone who could contend with divine forces and emerge victorious. When dawn broke and Jacob limped toward his meeting with Esau, he was no longer the same man who had fled 20 years earlier. He bowed 7 times as he approached his brother, showing deep respect and humility. And then something beautiful happened. Esau ran to meet him, embraced him, kissed him, and they both wept. 20 years of strategic preparation, combined with genuine transformation and humility, had turned a potential disaster into a moment of reconciliation. Esau even refused Jacob's gifts at first, saying, "I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." So what were the final results of Jacob's incredible journey? Let's look at the numbers. Materially, he returned to the promised land with wealth that was almost impossible to calculate. His flocks and herds were so vast they required separate territories. He had hundreds of servants, multiple wives, and had accumulated what would be equivalent to hundreds of millions in today's currency. But the material wealth was just the beginning. Jacob's 12 sons would become the patriarchs of the 12 tribes of Israel. His family line would grow into a nation that would influence human civilization for millennia. The business empire he built became the foundation for one of history's most significant peoples. Jacob had started as the second-born son with no inheritance rights. He was ending as the father of a nation, with wealth beyond measure and a legacy that would echo through history. This is what true long-term thinking looks like. Jacob wasn't just building wealth for himself. He was architecting generational impact that would span thousands of years. So how do we take Jacob's ancient strategies and apply them to our modern world? Jacob's story isn't just historical. It's a blueprint for building wealth, an influence that works just as powerfully today. Let me break down the 5 core principles that made Jacob successful and show you exactly how to implement them in your life right now. Principle number 1. Long-term vision. Jacob consistently thought in decades, not days. When he worked 14 years just to marry Rachel, he wasn't just being romantic. He was investing in his future family line and business partnerships. When he agreed to Laban's seemingly unfavorable deal with the livestock, he was thinking 6 years ahead to the genetic outcomes he could engineer. How do you apply this today? Stop making decisions based on immediate gratification. If you're an entrepreneur, don't chase every quick profit opportunity. Instead, ask yourself, what will this decision look like in 5 years? 10 years? Invest time now to gain exponentially later. Build systems, not just income. Create assets that appreciate while you sleep. Principle number 2. Specialized. Knowledge is competitive advantage. Jacob's breakthrough came from understanding animal genetics when no one else did. He had information that others lacked, and he used it strategically. In Laban's eyes, Jacob was just a shepherd. In reality, Jacob was running a sophisticated breeding operation that would make modern geneticists proud. Today, this means becoming the absolute expert in your field. Don't be a generalist in a specialist's game. Whether you're in technology, finance, marketing, or any other industry, go deeper than your competition. Read the research papers they won't read. Learn the skills they won't learn. Attend the conferences they won't attend. Your specialized knowledge becomes your unfair advantage. If you're in real estate, understand market cycles better than anyone else. If you're in stocks, master financial analysis beyond what casual investors know. If you're building a business, understand your customer's psychology better than your competitors do. Information arbitrage, knowing what others don't know, is still one of the fastest paths to wealth. Principle number 3. Strategic persistence. Here's what most people miss about Jacob's story. He didn't just persist, he persisted strategically. When Laban deceived him about Rachel, Jacob didn't quit in anger. He adapted his strategy and negotiated new terms. When the original deal wasn't working, he created a new deal that worked even better. This isn't about grinding mindlessly. It's about maintaining your ultimate objective while remaining flexible about your methods. If one approach isn't working, pivot. But don't abandon your vision just because the path is harder than expected. Modern application. Set your long-term goals in stone, but write your methods in pencil. If your business model isn't working, change the model, but keep the mission. If your investment strategy isn't producing results, adjust the strategy, but maintain your wealth-building focus. The market will test your persistence. Make sure you're persisting in the right direction. Principle number 4. Intelligent relationship building. Jacob understood something crucial. Your network determines your net worth, but only if you approach relationships with integrity and genuine value creation. Even when Laban repeatedly changed the terms of their agreements, Jacob continued to honor his commitments. This built a reputation that served him for decades. When Jacob finally left Laban, even his father-in-law had to admit that God had blessed Laban because of Jacob's presence. That's the kind of value-add relationship you want to build. Today, this means being the person others want to do business with repeatedly. Honor your agreements, even when it's inconvenient. Deliver more value than you promise. Build bridges, not just transactions. The people you serve today become your advocates tomorrow. In practical terms, follow through on every commitment. No matter how small. Return calls promptly. Pay your debts early. Recommend others for opportunities, even when there's no immediate benefit to you. Your reputation becomes a multiplier for every other strategy you implement. Principle number 5. Faith plus action. Here's where Jacob's approach becomes truly powerful. He combined unwavering faith with intelligent action. His faith wasn't passive hoping. It was active confidence that allowed him to take calculated risks others wouldn't take. When Jacob agreed to work for animals that didn't exist yet, he was acting on faith that his breeding knowledge would produce results. When he decided to return home despite the threat from Esau, he combined prayer with strategic preparation. This isn't about religion. It's about operating with conviction and purpose that goes beyond immediate circumstances. It's about having a vision so compelling that you'll persist through obstacles that stop others. Practically speaking, develop unshakable conviction about your long-term vision. But back that conviction with meticulous preparation and intelligent action. Don't just believe you'll succeed. Create systems that make success inevitable. Don't just hope for opportunities. Position yourself where opportunities naturally occur. For entrepreneurs, this means believing in your vision while executing with precision. For investors, this means having confidence in long-term wealth building while making data-driven decisions. For professionals, this means having faith in your value while continuously developing your skills. The magic happens when these 5 principles work together. Long-term vision gives you direction. Specialized knowledge gives you advantage. Strategic persistence gives you staying power. Intelligent relationships give you leverage. And faith plus action gives you the courage to execute when others hesitate. Jacob didn't just get lucky. He systematically applied these principles for 20 years until they transformed him from a refugee into one of the wealthiest men of his generation. Jacob's story reveals a profound truth that echoes across millennia. True fortune isn't built by accident, and it's not built by luck. It's built by the deliberate combination of intelligent strategy and unwavering purpose. Think about what we've discovered today. A man who started with nothing, no inheritance, no birthright, no obvious advantages, transformed himself into one of history's most influential figures. He did it by seeing value where others saw ordinary circumstances. He did it by persisting strategically when others would have quit. He did it by building relationships based on integrity even when others operated through deception. And he did it by combining faith with action in a way that created exponential results. Jacob's 20-year journey from exile to empire shows us that building lasting wealth requires more than just clever tactics. It requires character transformation. The deceiver had to become a man of honor. The schemer had to become a strategic thinker. The refugee had to become a leader. But here's what makes Jacob's story so relevant to us today. Every principle he used is still available to you right now. The markets have changed. The technology has evolved. But human nature and the fundamental laws of value creation remain constant. You can start implementing long-term thinking today instead of chasing quick fixes. You can begin developing specialized knowledge in your field instead of remaining surface level. You can choose strategic persistence over either quitting too early or grinding without direction. You can build relationships based on genuine value creation instead of just networking for personal gain. And you can combine your vision with intelligent action instead of just hoping for the best. The question isn't whether these principles work. Jacob's results prove they do. The question is whether you'll have the discipline to apply them consistently, especially when the results aren't immediately visible. Remember, Jacob worked for 14 years before he even started building his own wealth. He invested 20 years total before returning home as a wealthy man. In our instant gratification culture, that kind of long-term commitment seems almost impossible. But that's exactly why it works, because so few people are willing to do it. Jacob's transformation from deceiver to Israel, from refugee to patriarch, from nothing to abundance, shows us what becomes possible when strategy meets purpose, when intelligence meets integrity, and when vision meets persistent action. The same opportunity that was available to Jacob 4,000 years ago is available to you today. The only question is, what will you do with it?